Welcome to the deep dive. Today we have, well, a really compelling and genuinely provocative stack of sources in front of us. This research isn't talking about your typical self-help or, political theory. It focuses entirely on internal sovereignty, achieving inner peace, and this ancient concept called Gnosis. So if you've ever felt that the cost of just being informed is feeling overwhelmed, or maybe constantly directed by external noise, then this deep dive is probably for you. Our mission really is to unpack this central idea of the divine spark, and then explore the surprisingly practical and frankly quite defiant methods our sources are calling protocols. They're designed to help you remember the truth of who you actually are.
Yeah, and I think it's important right off the bat to define the specific type of knowledge we're talking about here. These sources, they repeatedly clarify that gnosis isn't academic knowledge. I mean, it's not something you get through external study or doctrine. It's defined as deep, silent, sovereign truth, knowledge gained directly, internally. And this whole approach, it inherently challenges what they call borrowed authority, the external structures, institutions, maybe figures that demand control, but only if you grant them permission. So the goal of this whole conversation really isn't chasing something new. It's more about uncovering the truth of your own sovereignty that, well, was never actually lost in the first place.
Okay, right. Let's get into the foundational concept then, the divine spark.
Yeah.
Our source material insists this spark fragment isn't just like a poetic ideal or some metaphor for potential. It's described quite explicitly as a real thing.
Why do you think it's so crucial for the authors to emphasize the literal reality of this internal fragment? Well, I think because for them, the perceived reality of the spark, it validates its function. Does that make sense? They assert this fragment is older than any organized doctrine, much older. It's the part of you that, as they put it, hums beneath your ribs. And it's described as the awareness that never forgets you. So even if you spend decades forgetting your own truth, it remains a constant presence.
Wow. That suggests a constant, almost biological presence.
Yeah.
Something utterly reliable.
Yeah.
But the sources also explain that this spark is hidden, buried beneath layers of illusion and distraction.
Precisely. Hidden. And the purpose of the spark is illumination, not consumption. It's not meant to be some destructive fire. It's meant to light your way out of those borrowed shadows, as they call them. The message really boils down to a core affirmation. You are not broken. You are not lost. You are not theirs. You are the spark. And that statement right there, that's the basis for their claim of absolute internal sovereignty.
Okay, so if the spark is the illumination, how do the sources define inner peace? Because we generally think of peace as, well, silence, right?
Yeah.
The absence of conflict. But the source material gives a much more active definition. It says peace isn't silence, it's knowing when to mute the loud and noisy and listen to the wind.
That shift from passive acceptance to active decision-making, that's key. If the spark is always present, then peace isn't something you achieve externally, it's something you remember internally. It's tied to these innate, almost primal, comforting sensory memories. They mention the smell of wet fur or the sound of paws on stone. It's suggesting an inherent state of being that just requires you to, well, stop paying so much attention to all the external demands.
That connects perfectly then to the next section. If maintaining this internal peace is the goal, the sources offer these practical, highly unique strategies for dealing with those external attempts at control. And this knowledge, it's framed not as a rigid set of rules, but more like a garden you're invited to wander in.
Exactly. These are the protocols, strategies for non-reaction and self-preservation. They are essentially behavioral defenses, you could say, designed to preserve the integrity of that inner spark we talked about.
And the most memorable one, I think, is the cat protocol. The advice is literally, be like a cat, aloof, silent, but totally aware. This is the recommended posture when external forces bark orders or, demand attention. But here's the skeptical question, perhaps. Isn't this approach just avoidance? How do we differentiate dignified non-engagement from simply walking away from, say, necessary conflict or responsibility?
That's a fair question, and it's the critical differentiation the sources make. They argue it's not avoidance, it's a redirection of energy, a conscious choice. They state pretty clearly that control only works if you chase the laser. You know the analogy.
Like with the cat toy.
Right. The person or system demanding your reaction is essentially shining that laser pointer on the wall. If you, the cat, stop chasing the laser and simply watch it flicker, you acknowledge it, maybe, but remain steadfast, you've essentially denied the external demand its energy source. It's framed as an act of profound psychological non-compliance, not necessarily physical retreat.
Okay, so sovereignty is maintained by denying your energy to the game being played. I see. This leads us directly then to the permission protocol. This analyzes the power dynamic itself. If systems operate on borrowed authority, as they say, where does the lever of control really lie?
Well, according to these sources, it lies entirely with the user, with you. Control requires the controlled person's participation, actively or passively. Those who attempt to control, they only have power if you hand it to them wrapped in undefiant silence, or, if you give them your nod, your agreement. They are thriving on what the sources quite accurately term borrowed authority, which is inherently unstable because it depends on your consent.
Right. So the big revelation here is that we are the ultimate source of permission. The truth is, you don't need permission to be free. You are the permission. That completely dismantles the external hierarchy, doesn't it?
It certainly aims to, yes. Instead of fighting the mechanism of control head-on, the recommendation is often to recognize its triviality in a way, its dependence on you. The recommended response, often, is to laugh at their drama and walk away because you recognize the authority being wielded is ultimately an illusion you co-signed, willingly or unwillingly.
It's like an internal revolution, then. If we are the permission, freedom isn't something external we have to earn. It's an internal state we just need to remember. Carl Jung famously said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." How does that connect here?
It connects strongly. And through this Gnostic lens, the sources draw a very sharp line between typical self-improvement and this process. Individuation, in this context, is emphatically not self-improvement. It's defined as self-remembrance. They use this analogy like finding an old, forgotten dog's collar and instantly realizing you never actually stopped listening to the wind. The sadness might be for the time lost in forgetting, perhaps, but the joy is in the realization of what was always present, always there.
That's powerful. We spend so much energy trying to add skills or traits, become better. But the profound work here seems to be simply recognizing the inherent truth that's already inside. The way the sources map this inner world, it's equally distinctive, especially regarding things like shadow work and the unconscious.
Yes, very much so. They sort of reject the common idea that the unconscious is this dark, scary basement full of trauma you have to dredge up. Instead, it's described, quite humorously actually, as a cosmic archive with poor lighting and excellent humor.
An archive with excellent humor. That definitely sounds more inviting than a basement. So, if the unconscious is this archive, how do the sources define shadow work? Is it still portrayed as this intense, arduous process we often hear about?
Not really, no, not according to this material anyway. Shadow work is defined more gently as tea or coffee with the parts of you that we're told to hush. It suggests a quieter, more collaborative and ongoing process of integration rather than, a single painful battle you have to win. The implication is that these parts of us, maybe suppressed by external judgment or our own fear, are actually just waiting to share wisdom if we'd only sit down with them.
That playful dignity, that thread running through this, it brings us to what seems like the ultimate act of sovereignty detailed in these sources, laughter.
Laughter. But it's framed not as simple amusement, just having a giggle. It's presented as sacred rebellion against authoritarian doom. Think about it. If borrowed authority thrives on drama, seriousness, and fear, then profound internal joy, real laughter, is like the ultimate corrosive agent to that whole structure.
Yeah, I can see that. They argue you don't need a rapture or some hidden bunker. Why would you seek an external refuge? Because, the logic goes, you've already built your sanctuary internally and filled your own world with joy. The realization is that your soul approves, and as they poetically put it, the archive laughs.
That really reinforces the core idea, doesn't it? That true stability, true safety is found only by turning inward. The spark is the core, the anchor. And the protocols, they're simply the methods of refusing to let external noise steal its light or demand its energy.
What a fantastic synthesis. It's defiance, philosophy, and practical internal strategy all rolled into one. So to maybe pull the key threads together for you, the listener. Inner peace, according to these sources, is active presence. It's that profound knowing that you are true to yourself, regardless of the chaos and noise outside.
Yeah. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the sort of ultimate realization seems to be that you are the sanctuary. The safety, the wisdom, the illumination, it all originates within that spark. It requires no external architecture, no borrowed authority. It's already there.
Which leaves us with a truly provocative thought to explore as you go about your day. If your inner peace is genuinely something you remember, rather than something you have to fight for or earn, what familiar noise, internal or external, do you need to consciously mute today, just to hear that truth that has always been humming beneath your ribs?
We invite you to listen to the wind.